Welcome to the New Directions podcast, where we specialise in helping real women achieve real transformations.
Hello and welcome to the New Directions podcast, where we're going to be talking about the latest that is happening here in Melbourne and that is also happening across the world at the moment in Europe. We are opening up from the latest lockdown. Super exciting, wonderful news. And what we're going to be talking about is reflecting on, to a degree, what we have learnt, what we were able to overcome, and how we can manage ourselves better for potentially the next time. Because it does seem like we're going to have to become a lot more adaptable and a lot more used to these interruptions, it would seem. And basically the only way to work with this is you've got to flow with it or you'll rally against it. But it seems like right now we're going to have to go through a period of adaptation. So what I wanted to, basically, for those that don't know, so in Melbourne we just had our latest 5-day snap lockdown. It's after having 111 days last year, and it was a different experience. It was definitely a different experience. But what we want to go through today is basically what have we learnt, and were we able to perform at a high, strong level across all of our responsibilities when this happened, and did we have those new routines set up? So and if we do, then we're sweet. So I wanted to go through this and basically look at these questions. All right, so were you still able to keep working? All right, so if you're able to keep working, then sweet as, you get a big tick there. So for example, for a lot of people in the fitness industry, such as myself, we immediately switched gears into online training. Thankfully, we were still able to do one-on-one training. But basically groups immediately switch to Zoom, and you just get to switch gears straight away. And then there's lots of other ways that we can adapt. And that also means that we don't have a period where there's a lot of people that go from, having their workout routines at a certain time of the day and everything runs smoothly, to them being like, great, now what do? I have, no form of exercise, which does really mess with people's day. All right, so then were you able to provide value to others? All right, so when we are going through this transition, a lot of people are getting frustrated when all of a sudden, for example, if you're working a cafe or a restaurant, it was Valentine's Day weekend, and it was also Chinese New Year, and so there were restaurants that had stocked themselves up as they should have, and then all of a sudden found that they had to throw out a whole lot of food. So they were not able to perform at the highest level. Some of them have been able to switch gears. So for example, some companies, what they're doing is they are completely changing everything. They're closing their lease for their kitchen, for example, or they're shrinking it big time, and then they're setting up, they're buying vans and then setting up to do delivery. All right, so they're getting rid of those big overhead costs. And the reason why I'm going through this on a fitness podcast is because basically fitness and mental health is what's going to help with this transition. All right, and so that's important. So did you exercise the whole way through? Super helpful, right? So if all of a sudden you stop exercising, you stop seeing people, and especially if you're living at home alone, that's a terrible combination. So we want to make sure that, that basically you're still exercising at the very minimum, getting in, for example, so solutions here are, you're getting in a Zoom workout and you're smashing it out with some people live, and you can have a chat at the end and all of those things, or that you're getting on YouTube and smashing out a workout there, but then there's potentially a feeling of aloneness. The other thing to do, which I just did, was I bought a bike stand that I could set up for basically riding my bike on there, so that, if for whatever reason can't leave the house, it doesn't mean that I don't have cardio training. And that's super important for someone like me, because if I don't have my cardio training, I'm just nowhere near as energetic, nowhere near as excited, nowhere near as pumped up. So yeah, the moment that I heard that this might be happening, I was like, oh God, I got to get that bike trainer sorted. Otherwise, it's going to be 5 times the price. So, and I won't be able to get it for another 3 months probably. So that was super important. All right. So then, did you take time out each day for a little quiet time for yourself to unwind? So as we know, there is the mind, body, spirit connection. And so when our mind or our spirit is feeling depleted, then it will affect our bodies, and we might feel that through tension headaches or a lot of muscle tightness or any of these things of this nature, and then obviously in reverse. So by taking out a little bit of time each day, so for example, I did that this morning. So after we had the morning classes and we had a little bit of meditation, I then spent the next 20 minutes or so listening to some beautiful meditation music while staying in that zone for myself and going within myself and reminding myself of, the connection to the greater whole, and that we are all connected and we're all intertwined, and going further into my subconscious, which is always fun. So it doesn't necessarily have to be religious. It can be spiritual, but not religious. At the same time, it can totally be religious. So it's just what works best for you. So then we have, did you reach out to friends and family to see how they were going too? So another big one. So it's a strange thing, but and I'm learning this as we go through it as well. I feel like anyone in Melbourne is now an expert in what happens when people go into isolation for 3 months. But what I am noticing is that during times that you might feel either fear or frustration or tense, you're also going to then stop reaching out to friends, stop reaching out to family, stop communicating, stop exercising, and all of those things. And so the best way to snap yourself out of that and give yourself the metaphorical slap across the face and give yourself some energy again is going to be reaching out to friends, reaching out to family, whether by Zoom, phone call, or going for a walk with them in person. Much more effective. That's going to help a million times, and that's always going to help the most when you want to do it the least. So that's super, super crazy important. And also naturally you'll know if you always, like when you're walking or when you go for jogs or when you're cycling, you'll know in yourself, or strength training, you'll know in yourself if during those times that's when you feel best, then you need to be doing that, and you just need to find a way to get it done, no matter what. Okay, so those were the main questions. But so essentially then when we go mind, body, and spirit, so we go mental health. All right, so I feel like sometimes when we are well versed in our knowledge and in our space, we assume that everyone else is too. But sometimes we find that, so for example, I'm quite introspective, and therefore can see relationships and things that sometimes other people can't, that are a little bit more focused on getting external things achieved. So we're going to go through each category and just recap on what's incredibly important in each of these. And these are also backed by lots of research, but we're not going to go into that today. All we're going to do is just recap on what we need in order to stay strong and capable in ourselves, no matter the environment. So for mental health, we need connection. We need to be a person of value to others. We need to be taking on responsibility and having in-person interactions. We need to be speaking, reading, listening. Okay, so I know those are kind of silly, but so for example, a lot of people are kind of going within themselves and watching a lot of YouTube and all of these things. And then they're pulling themselves away from other people and other interactions. So you need to get out of the house no matter what. Okay, so if you're anywhere close to the beach, you still need to go to the beach. You need to go for walks. You need to get out there. Whether you're afraid of a disease or you're a bit tense about police pressure. Either way, you need to get outside. You need your vitamin D, and I should say we need our vitamin D. We need to see that the world is still chugging along just like it always was. The waves are coming in and they're flowing out just like they always do. And the birds are just noticing that we're not really hanging out outside as much, right? So when it recreates that connection to nature that we really need, and it will calm our mind, body, and soul. So then reading, when I say reading, the reason I bring that up is because if we do have a bit of extra time inside, then reading a physical book, reading physical books improves our mood, it improves our capacity to imagine, it improves our ability to also rest and sleep and use our creativity. Reading off of a computer screen does the opposite of all of those things. Fact. Okay, so that's a really important one to know. So even though you might have your Kindle and all of these things, and they do save money, which is wonderful, but they have a negative impact on your mental health, and that's well documented, and it's also it's fascinating because it's so subtle, but essentially it's got to do with the flicker rate of the screens, and it's got to do with obviously the rays that are coming off of them, and the fact that you're really looking at lights flashing on and off thousands of or hundreds of times a second. So you're not, whereas a paper doesn't do that to you. So that's important to know, and it's important to get back to that, I believe. And if we're not going to be communicating as much, especially for those people that are living at home alone, it may be wise to consider moving in with someone else or moving in with family members, because the act of speaking, if you do not speak for long periods of time, or you greatly reduce the number of words that you say, there'll be a connection to how happy you are, and you'll likely you'll likely feel depressed and become depressed if you do not get that interaction enough. So even if you read and speak out loud. So that's basically the mental health, just very, very simple overview. And then for physical health, cardio training, strength training, balance, coordination, or expression through dance, right? These are really, really important. So for anyone that is a dancer that loves dancing, right, if they're not moving, they're not thinking. And so they really, really need it. And especially, what's the greatest forms of dance for the mind, body, spirit, the whole connection is going to be when you're dancing with another. So if you can do that because you've got family, you've got a partner there, fantastic. That's likely a wise move. Or if you can find any other way of doing it, then that's going to be very, very good for you. And then so the cardio training, so whether that's getting your jogs done, getting your bike riding done, whether it's inside or outside, all of that's going to be super important. Keeping up your strength training, so critical, all right? Because if you're not doing strength training, then you're going to lose a bit of muscle mass, you're going to feel sluggish, your bone density is going to decrease, all of these things, right? And then, balance and coordination, always important, especially for anyone that's getting a little bit older. Super important. Okay, and then finally, the spiritual health, right? So meditating, prayer, connection to a greater being one with, a greater being, the universe. I think we all know that these are, intuitively, we know that they are very, very good. You can call them whatever you like. You can call them mindfulness. Essentially, they are critical in order to make sure that we take care of our spiritual health and we don't feel like we're wasting time and and just feeling like we're not able to express ourselves individually in the way that we would like. So these are the three primary areas that I really wanted to focus on today, because I am of the opinion, unfortunately, that that these things will continue to happen throughout 2022 that we're now in. So it is the 17th of the 2nd, 2021. So getting fast tracked. So 2021, these things are likely going to keep on happening, and for multiple factors, all of which are outside of my lane to talk about right now. But so what that means is that we need to, as a community, as a city, as a country, we need to be adaptable, and we need to learn, how to flow with these interruptions. Or, you can always move to the country and get far, far away. But essentially, I just thought that was a really, really important message to get out. And and especially because we have, and I will just lightly touch on this, but so in the time that I've been in Melbourne, I have never seen, known, or heard about so many mental health problems ever. And so that is obviously due to these lockdowns. Okay, so when everyone's disconnected, the number one thing for how you can tell whether someone's going to make it to 100 years, the number one contributor, or I'll tell you the top two, are social integration and close relationships, right? If you don't have those two, then all of a sudden you don't live as long. So this is really important. So anyhow, what I have been hearing is also of people that when we go into a situation where we feel a loss of control, or where we're disconnected from society or from our friends and family, there is a part of us that is in pain and genuinely in pain, and a part of us is also dying. There's a section of the brain that begins to shrink as these things happen. I'll leave the links in the description below, but for the scientific studies behind that. But what that means is that I have been hearing of people that have vices, whether it be alcohol or maybe other forms of drugs that they maybe occasionally used in the past, and then they're living by themselves, and they are leaning more and more into these things as the time goes on. And what that results in is that I'm hearing lots and lots of cases of people that have passed that should not have passed, that had this not been happening, they would be healthy, happy, and here today. And that we're likely never in any real danger of this disease. So what that means is that we need, as a community, to come together to connect and to care for one another. Otherwise, we will be losing people that should not have been lost, and that can easily be happening when we may be more comfortable than others, and so we're completely ignorant to the fact of other people's pains, especially when they will never be promoted in the media. So, on that note, I will wrap it up. I hope that was helpful, and I look forward to talking to you on a better note, on a happier note, in our next podcast. But thank you for listening.